Hello everyone, welcome to my new class where I am going to teach you how you can create flawless reflections. So let's get started. So not so fast, don't worry. I am going to share with you 5 tips which you can use to create flawless reflections. Okay, so just follow along. You need just 3 brushes, the flat mop and the pointed round brush. First we'll start with the sky. So for the sky, I am going to wet the sky surface. And we are going to use the wet on wet technique for the sky. So here I'm going to take 2 colors, the cobalt blue and the pines gray, and going to give some diagonal strokes to create that momentum in my sky. I always like to depict the sky very dramatic. Adding such strokes creates a mood in your painting. So don't forget to do that. After the sky, we will move to our mountains. So for the mountains, I have again taken the cobalt blue and I'm just going to make a simple shape. So now in a very simple manner, you can just take some olive green and some lemon yellow, mix them together, give few strokes to create that greenery. So let's start with our first foremost tip. The first tip is that always keep in your mind one thing very clear, that reflections are nothing but a mirror image of the object. So if it's a tree, then you have to do the mirror image of it. If it's a house, same for everything, mountain, anything. For the sky also. So always remember to put the same colors in the form as if they are a mirror image. The second point which you need to understand is that water is the game changer in watercolors. So depending on what kind of reflection you want, you're going to add water. If you want a very soft reflection, which I'm going to show you here, so for that purpose you are going to use a semi-wet surface. Basically your paper does not need to be too wet. It should have water, but it should not be drooping. Okay, so you can also check by moving your paper a little bit sideways, and depending on the shine of the water, you can make out how damp the surface is. Second thing you can do is try. So here see, I'm going to put the first stroke and see how much it blooms. If it is blooming in a controlled way, the way I like it to be, then it's perfect. But if it is blooming too much, so basically blooming is spreading of the paint depending on the dampness of the paper. So here you can see that it is not spreading that much and it's semi-wet. So semi-wet surfaces will give you soft reflections. They won't be precise, they won't be very bright or dark, they won't be too crisp with the edges, but they will give very soft, nice reflections to your surface. So now comes the second method, in which we are going to use a controlled wet. Basically it is going to be wet but not too wet, and that's how we are going to get more precise reflections. This is the method which we are going to use in our landscape. So here I would also like to share a very important third tip, which is quite important when you are doing the reflection of any tree, that you take the tip of the tree and make a straight line using that same tip, because as you extend it down onto the water, then the reflection is exactly like the opposite of it, which is very important. So here I'm just creating few pine trees, showing you the method. If you want a tutorial on pine trees, please share it in the comments and I will get back to you with that tutorial of how easily you can make pine trees. So here for the reflection, always remember the fourth point is to leave a little gap between your reflection and land. So here I'm going to leave a light crisp white line and then going to create the reflection. So I'm adding water, but I'm leaving a little fine line between the reflection and the land. So here you can see I'm just giving a little water stroke also. A little blue also you can add in some parts for the water. And then to the reflection of the trees. Always remember, the most important part is that you make a mirror image. So always try to copy the same size. Always you can use a straight line to create that straight tree reflection into the water. Check the dampness. If it is blotting too much, you can wipe it with a tissue. So here I used a tissue where I felt that the paint was blooming too much. Because of a lot of water, I was not able to get a precise reflection, a more precise one. So what did I do? I just lift up that dampness from the paper by just dabbing a little bit of tissue. And here I'm using a fine tip brush and creating the pine trees exactly in a mirror image. So here you can see on the left side it was blooming more, so you have got softer reflection, and on the right side of the pine trees the reflections are more precise. So how I control the dampness of the paper, I showed you the method. You can wait for it to naturally dry a little bit or use a tissue and damp it slightly. Don't press too hard, don't take up all the moisture. Just a little damp and it is okay for you to move ahead. See here, you can see I have left a white line between the land and the reflection. So that is very important to give it an effect of that reflection. Now another important thing is to create some lines of, so this will be the plain white lines, which you can also use a white color to do that, or just lift it up just the way I am doing it. When it is still wet, you can use a flat brush, damp flat brush, and just lift up that paint by rubbing it. Also remember to wipe your brush after lifting. It will just lift up that paint and give those light strokes which are required. You can also try this on a sample paper first and then move to your final work. So be careful that it doesn't bloom. Check if your mountain paint is dry before you start doing the pine trees. And I'm just going to add few pine trees in different heights and some trees on the left also, some greenery and everything. So here also I'm just going to repeat one more time that you use 2-3 shades of green. Don't make the greenery using only one green. So add some little bit of burnt sienna to your olive greens to give the darker areas of shadows in the tree, especially for a few trees which are going to be nearer to you. So this gives that perspective in your painting. It adds that element of perspective. You can see how it affects the look of a painting changes completely when you give the dimension by adding some depths and highlights. So now with a big mop brush, I'm going to wet the surface to show the water reflection of our trees and a little bit of our sky. So for the sky, I'm just going to take the same colors. Always remember to use the same colors for reflection. So don't change the colors. If for the trees, for the mountains, for whatever you're painting the reflection of, the colors have to be the same. So here you can see I'm just adding a little bit of blue strokes. And that's it. When it is wet, it is going to bloom and very nicely give you soft ripple effect. Just some smaller strokes as it is going far from the viewer, and it were bigger strokes because these are near to you. So if you feel that it is mixing too much, you can just dab a tissue and stop that. Now you can see here, what am I doing? This is an important trick. You should leave that little bit of white capping in between your reflection and your object. So here the trees, here we are going to leave a little bit of white line gap in between and then show the reflection into the water. Now as the surface was wet and it was a damp, it was not too wet and it was not too dry. So here you can see I'm getting very nice semi-soft reflections. So depending on that, you need to understand the dampness of the paper. Now the same concept of mirror image. Please just make a straight line from the top of the tree to match the height and match the straightness of the tree. Always remember, if your tree goes in a different direction, then the effect will change completely. The paper had gone dry, so I just sprayed a little bit of water to add the dampness again so that I get some soft edges. I don't want a very crisp reflection. Slowly just add on the same shapes in an opposite direction, a mirror image of that. You can also turn the paper around, but remember to have the same size, same height and same direction always. One very important tip which I would like to share is that I always like to keep some empty, like basically no background color, no sky color, where the reflections are falling onto the water. I feel they give a much better effect. If I fill up the whole water area with the blue color of the sky, then the reflections don't look so good. That's my personal opinion, which I try to follow whenever I'm showing any reflections. I like to leave a little bit of whitish area. Now with the flat brush, you can see I just damped the flat brush, and now I'm just going to lift up the paint. But because I already showed you that method, I'm going to also show you the same effect you can get using a white color. So here I am just taking the white paint onto the flat side of my flat brush and just giving some horizontal strokes, small horizontal strokes in between the tree reflection. So just a quick review of what we learned. So here you can see that soft reflections are when the surface is more wet. They are not more precise. The second ones with semi-damp surfaces are more precise, more crisper, and you can use this white paint or just lift up the areas using a zigzag movement or horizontal strokes to give that effect. Here also in this tree also I've showed you, it's just a mirror image. Just make a straight line from the park, from the top of the tree in the opposite direction, so you have an correct idea of the height of the reflection matching the object. Always remember to keep these things and these tips in your mind, and you will be able to paint any kind of reflections very easily. I'm sure about it. So basically in watercolors, water is the king. So everything is going to be according to the water. You have to slowly understand how much water you need to use and what is semi-wet, damp and too wet. I hope you like this class. I hope you will practice, and with a little dedication, I'm sure you're going to master it. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.